Hello and welcome back to another amazing episode of Sports Talk with Dad. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's get right into it. My name is Kyle, and as always, I cannot call this Sports Talk with Dad without the man sitting next to me, a man who was in his 30s when the Rat Pack was just starting, my dad, Tim.
So not true.
The Rat Pack has to be the first boy band of all time.
Probably, unless it's like the Mills Brothers or somebody, but the Rat Pack they were buddies. They were the epitome of cool.
I think they still are.
They are.
In a lot of ways. Like when you think cool, you still think back
Frank
to
and
Sammy and Dean. I mean, it was just cool.
They showed up in tuxes at all times. And then just put on a show. It was no showing. If you showed up at a Rat Pack concert or a performance in Vegas and you were just wearing a sports shirt or something, they'd stop the show and kick your ass off.
Yeah. Different time. I mean, I wear suits now and then. It's very rare at this point. And even when I do, I don't wear a tie. It's just different time.
I told you up until, probably 5 years ago, I had 24, 25 suits, wore a suit every day for most of my career.
Yeah.
But you know what? I liked it better that way. And I think that's a pendulum that's going to swing back because guys your age who remember it, you set yourself apart from your customers, or when you're in a business setting, you just set yourself apart if you're wearing a suit rather than just jeans and a t-shirt.
That's it. I'm wearing a suit next show. It's going to happen. I do like wearing a sports coat. But see, you know what's really funny? And I've played this game before. If you ever want to go into an office or into a meeting and people think you are dressed above everybody, do this for me. Wear tennis shoes, wear blue jeans, wear a plain colored shirt, be it black, white, gray, just plain color without any pockets, and put a sports coat on, and everybody will ask you, why are you so dressed up? I've done it, and every single person asks me, why are you so dressed up? I'm like, I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt right now. I just have a sports coat on. The effect of simply having a sports coat on is unbelievable.
Where for most of my career, if I would have showed up like that, I would have been sent home and told to dress appropriately.
Yeah.
And I send people home like that.
Yeah.
Even up to, 7 or 8 years ago.
Times have changed. I've walked into meetings now where I have a sports coat on, walk in and immediately take it off because I see how overdressed I am.
I think I told you the story. Meeting with the state of Wisconsin back in the day when I was negotiating a contract with them. And they had told me, we are golf shirts and khakis at the most. Most of the time it's jeans. That's how we want you to come in.
Yep.
And my bosses came into town and they threw a fit about, you've got to wear a suit. You got to wear a suit. Walked into the meeting. The guys from the state said, I thought we told you not to come in here in suits. And I just went like this to the, to my bosses. And they looked at me like, you don't have to throw us under the bus. Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. This was all you, but I'm telling you one thing. You want to look amazingly dressed. You dress like I am today in a Coach Prime t-shirt. I am loving Dion Sanders sweatshirt. My apologies.
It's actually a hoodie.
I am getting more and more impressed with Deion Sanders every single time I hear him talk.
He would be a place I would want my kids, if they were athletes, to play.
Hell yeah.
Any parent who wouldn't want their kids to play for Deion doesn't want them to be not only athletes, not only students, but good men.
If you haven't seen his interview on the Pat McAfee show, you have to watch it. It is exactly what you want to hear from people, to the point of Deion saying, if their first question when they come to my school is about NIL, I send them home. I don't want that kid on my team. I want a kid that's thinking about the next level. I want a kid that's going to work. I don't want a kid that's failing. If you have 3 Fs, how can I trust you? Because clearly you don't do what's good enough for you, so how can I rely on you to do what's good enough for me and the rest of the team?
It's all about personal responsibility and attitude with Deion.
It is, and it's holding kids accountable, and it's sad because you see coaches changing a lot, like letting a kid who won a Heisman Trophy put FU on his fingernails against his opponent.
You think Deion would let that happen?
Deion won't even let phones in the locker room.
Nor should he.
Nor should he. Put him down. You are here to play football. You are here to focus on the job you have to do.
Everybody always looked at Deion and said, oh, it's prime time. It's all an act. No. The prime time was an act.
Right. Made him a lot of
Deion
money.
Sanders was very serious.
Deion Sanders is the hardest working player probably ever to be in the NFL. I mean, that guy worked on his craft and wasn't going to allow himself or his team to fail.
During his time, it was Deion and Jerry Rice.
Yeah.
Two hardest working players probably
Definitely.
At that time. I don't know there's been anybody like that since. Randy Moss, Chris Carter, some of those guys.
That's another one people give a lot of flack to is Randy Moss. You don't have to like his attitude. That kid worked harder. Well, kid, what am I saying? He's older than me. But that guy worked harder than anybody else. I mean, I worked to be on the side. I loved being Randy Moss as a kid because you had to work hard to be Randy Moss. That didn't just come naturally. That is natural talent that took the steps to perfect his craft.
Sure, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't work at it and work at it and work at it, it's never going to develop, and you're selling yourself short.
Right.
You know, I talk about your Uncle Mark, who taught himself to be a switch hitter.
Yeah.
Impossible to do. I had limited talent.
Yeah.
But worked hard and was able to make the most of it. And thank God I did. I had a great time, whether it was in tennis, whether it was in baseball. But don't sell yourself short. And the name, image, likeness, all that stuff comes.
It does.
Afterwards.
Well, what if I said, I mean, I went on way too long with the NIL last time we talked about it, but I mean it. Like, it shouldn't be a recruiting tool. You come here, you work hard, and you earn it. Just like when you go to the NFL, you earn that next contract. You got to work for it. Same thing with here. And I love hearing Deion talk about if they mention NFL when they come to my school.
NIL or NFL?
NIL. Apparently, I can't talk today.
I just want to make
so
sure.
I appreciate you correcting me on that. But you come in here and talk NIL first thing you come to my school, I'm sending you packing. I don't want you here.
Well, and he's got the attitude, like I said, NIL shouldn't kick in until you are a sophomore minimum.
Correct.
It's not a recruiting tool.
You got to earn it.
Get it out of there. You come in here, prove what you can do.
Right.
And then if there's a sponsor, fine, you can get a few bucks.
Right. Well, and this is a coach that's also talking to the kids. I don't just want you for your talent. I want to know that you're here to work. I want to know when it's the fourth quarter that I can rely on you to not just be better than everybody else, but work harder than everybody else, because that's when you win games. And that's how you turn around a team that just went one and whatever.
And he will turn around Colorado. Will they be in the national championship conversation?
Championship? I'm not the only one.
No,
I apologize. I had to get him on that one.
Uh-huh. Have no idea if he'll get to that point, but he's going to get it's the old Vince Lombardi line. We will never attain perfection, but in striving for perfection, we will attain excellence.
Yeah.
And that's what Deion's going to preach, and that's what Fickell is preaching in Wisconsin. And Fickell is, it just not to change from Deion for a minute, but Luke Fickell has come to Wisconsin, and he is taking names and throwing things down. He is bringing in some talent.
I don't want to talk about Luke Fickell anymore.
Sure, we need to talk about it.
I don't need to talk about Luke Fickell anymore. But it's something, I go back.
He's going to steal players from Ohio State. You know that?
No, he's not. No, he's not. But I do look at something. I mean, I go way back to something my fourth grade football coach said, where he said, you can't be perfect. Practice doesn't make perfect. Nobody's perfect. Practice makes better. And you can always be better. And I've held on to that. I teach my kids that. You can always be better. You can never be perfect, but you can always be better. And it goes right into that Lombardi saying. And that's what Deion's going to preach. Listen, I don't care how good you are. Your attitude gets you on the field.
It's the same attitude, same thing that guys like Bobby Knight preached back in the day.
It's old coaching.
It is
100% old coaching style. I don't want you here if you're not going to work for it. If you're not going to work for it, I'm going to kick you off the team.
John Paulus.
Yeah, old tennis coach.
God, yeah, he's my tennis coach. And I'll never forget the day I went in there, was in the middle of the practice. We went for an hour and a half, whatever it was. And on one of them, I let the ball bounce twice.
You don't do that.
He just stopped. He goes, "If that's all the effort I'm gonna get out of you, we might as well stop right now." Tell you what, I never, ever let that ball bounce twice again.
I remember working with Paulus, and I just never. I always knew those type of guys carry a presence among themselves, where the minute you step on the court or on the field or just around them, you immediately want to step up, and you immediately just like, all right, I'm giving this all my effort, and it takes a special person to be that. And Deion is that person, and that's why I got the Coach Prime sweatshirt
Deion's
because he impresses me every single day.
He's one of those guys, like Paulus in my world,
Yeah.
that you don't ever want to let down because you don't want to let them down by
Nope.
you not working as hard as you can.
Oh, exactly.
And I think Fickell's like that. I think Harbaugh's like that.
It's funny because it seems like a controversial take now. Like to have guys there, especially raising boys. I have 2 boys that are going to look at them and say no. That are going to look at them and say, you have to earn this. You're not being coddled. I don't care what you did in high school. You don't earn money in high school. You earn money here. And then you earn money in the NFL. That's where it comes. And you hear too many times where, college wants to be looked at like a business, but it's all about winning. That's not what college is about. These are young men that were just boys and are turning into men, and you need to teach them how to do it. And it's a hard thing to do, and it seems like a controversial take now. Like men are not men anymore. Well, I tell you what, that hasn't changed. And I think Deion being in college, I'm hoping it lights a fire under everybody else, because a lot of parents are going to look at Deion and say, I want my kids coming to play for you because you're going to take my little boy and you're going to help turn him into a man.
We've talked about it. Deion, a lot of these kids that are going to go and play for Deion grew up without a father figure.
Yeah.
Worst thing that's happened in our country, a lot of dads are abdicating their responsibilities.
It's sad.
It is sad. It is sad. Young boys need father figures. Daughters need dads to be there for them and show them how to be a dad and what they should have for their expectations.
Father figure is very important in a kid's life. The mom's always going to be there to raise the kid, but a mom can't turn a boy into a man, and you need to do that. And being a man is not some egotistical maniac, right? It's somebody who knows how to treat people right and is there to protect his family.
And they are people that accept the responsibility with a smile, and they work hard to show their kids.
Right.
And it's something that's been lost, and it's got to come back. It's okay for boys to be boys.
It is. It is. And we mix that up. Like my youngest son, Jack, his one of his favorite colors are pink and purple. Like he loves them. He loves whatever kitty cat shows out there now, not the Japanese one, Gabby's, whatever it is. I don't know. I can't watch it, but he likes all that type of stuff. He's in love with stuffed animals. I love it. I absolutely love it. He's comfortable with it, and that's what he likes. That. Who cares about that? I'm still going to raise him to be a man, which means being responsible, being there to protect his family, and just being a good person and a good-natured person to the world.
Jack may like that stuff, but he's the first kid to go jumping off the back of the couch to dive on his big brother and roughhouse and play professional wrestling or whatever they're doing.
He is. He's a tough kid.
He's all boy.
He likes Gabby, whatever. If you know what that show's called, because I have no idea. Gabby's something house. Gabby's dollhouse, maybe? You let me know in the comments below, and while you're down there, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get to enjoy the show as much as we enjoy making it. Talking about controversial takes. So I had been thinking a lot. I had a long drive the other day. I was in the car for about 2 hours. And my mind wandered.
There's a shock.
As it does. It is all squirrel moment all the time, and it gets worse when I'm alone with nothing to do. But I started thinking about controversial takes when it comes to sports.
I've got one.
And I wanted to ask you, I have one too, but I wanted to ask you, do you believe is the most controversial take you have when it comes to sports history?
The first one that comes to mind, and we didn't talk about this before the show, but
Did not.
Top of my head because it's one that I've had for years. Derek Jeter is not a good captain. He was not a good leader of the Yankees, because if he was a good leader and was a good captain, he would have realized that the best shortstop in the game was Alex Rodriguez, and he would have said, I'm going to third. I'm putting our best player at shortstop where he belongs.
Jeter refused to move
because he was arrogant, and it had to be all about him and all about him playing the shortstop, the big time position. Derek Jeter was not a good leader. He made some incredible plays. He was a rah-rah guy.
Jeter made some incredible plays that Alex Rodriguez would have made look
easy. Jeter had to play shortstop. He wasn't the best shortstop on his team.
He wasn't the best shortstop in the league at all.
Alex Rodriguez probably was the best short. And I'm not talking about the roids.
Alex Rodriguez was the best shortstop to ever play the game.
He was the best shortstop. He didn't need the roids, I don't think. But he would have went down as the best shortstop of all time because he had the power, he had the speed, he had the range. In modern baseball, certainly, there was none better. And for Jeter not to recognize that and volunteer to move doesn't say a lot for him. Everything we talked about with Deion, Jeter doesn't fit in any of those categories.
I don't know why you pay Alex Rodriguez the money you did if you're not going to have him at shortstop, because at shortstop on any team in the league, he is an automatic upgrade. It says more about Alex Rodriguez willing to move to third and not saying a word about it than it does Jeter. That shows Rodriguez was a better captain than Derek Jeter ever was.
Exactly. So for all of you out there,
only Yankee fans.
There's a few other ones, but all you Yankee fans who always put Jeter in the top 5, he wasn't in the top 10. He's barely in the top 15 of great shortstops, but as a leader, as a captain, he's in my bottom 5 of all time. So there's your controversial take for the day.
That's a good one. I like that one. Mine that I really thought about, and I really thought long and hard about, is if integration in baseball happened in the early 1900s, which it should have, because a lot of people don't know this, baseball actually had I think he was a Hispanic player in the early 1900s that nobody ever talks about. Like they had
the game was going to be
he was either black or Hispanic or I don't know. He wasn't a white dude, but he played in baseball in like 1902. And for whatever reason, they decided, well, it's Judge Landis. They decided to go a different direction.
Landis didn't come around until after the Black Sox, but some of the owners, especially in the American League, were very racist as well.
Right. And so they decided against it. But I will say, if integration happened in the early 1900s, like Ty Cobb was calling for, which is another take I have, Babe Ruth is not looked at the same way he is today. Babe Ruth is 100. I think it would have been better for baseball because there's not this giant pedestal that can never be reached by purists of baseball, and it makes the conversation more fun, and baseball's better off for it. Because here's the reason why. If Bob Gibson's playing in the major leagues, you actually have a home run.
Bob Gibson did play in the major leagues.
At the end of his career.
Bob Gibson played there
No, not Bob Gibson. I'm talking about
Satchel Paige?
No. Catcher.
Josh Gibson.
Josh Gibson. I said the wrong first name. Sorry. Bob Gibson was a pitcher. Yes, one of the best pitchers of all time. No, it was Satchel Paige too. But if Josh Gibson was playing in the major leagues alongside Babe Ruth, you have your first home run race right there. I mean, it is exactly what Sosa and McGuire was, but for a career chase, because those guys are going bat for bat, home run after home run together.
It would have driven Ruth to be a better player than he already was,
because he had an ego. Babe, you want to see Babe Ruth get off the booze and the hot dogs? Put Josh Gibson in there where he actually has to compete for those home runs to be the best player. Now, nothing's taken away from Babe Ruth hitting those home runs. He would have hit them anyways, because let's talk about it. There would have been players like Satchel Paige that would have been there. But really, you would have lost the 4 and 5 pitchers probably on major league rosters. But other than that, I mean, you still had players that were amazing.
Ruth did play against the best
all
of
the time.
Best
the Barnstorming tours were all the time, and even when he went overseas to Japan, I mean, there was interracial play in Japan when he went over there.
He would have gotten his hits. He would have, but you know what? The sad part is, and Josh Gibson's the answer to my favorite all-time trivia question, which I won a lot of drinks on. He's the only player to ever hit a ball out of Yankee Stadium over left field.
Yeah, I will tell you, bar trivia used to be a lot of fun.
It was. Before
it's not anymore because everybody's got Google and just answer it. So if you're doing bar trivia, don't look at your phone. That's cheating.
That's cheating. But
I will say, I mean, Babe Ruth is not looked at the same way. It's a conversation about
I think he is.
Babe Ruth. It's the conversation about Josh Gibson, and it's the battle between those two. And you don't have this player on a pedestal like you do, the best player of all time, Babe Ruth. That conversation is very, very different at that point, especially with Josh Gibson playing catcher for as long as he did, where Babe Ruth is just sitting out in the outfield.
I love Josh Gibson. I caught. And other than Johnny Bench, Josh Gibson is probably my favorite catcher of all time.
Definitely.
But Gibson, they always talk about he died because of alcoholism.
Right.
If he's allowed in the major leagues, he probably doesn't die of alcoholism, but because that really gnawed at him that he couldn't play in the major leagues. He was just as good as all of them.
He was. Yeah, same with Satchel Paige. Satchel Paige was furious that he wasn't the first black player in Major League Baseball.
There's a reason he wasn't.
Well, yeah, because he was going to beam people when he first came up.
Look, Satchel was a showman.
Yes.
And at that time, a showman's not what they needed. They needed somebody who'd come in.
Well, and let's be honest, Jackie Robinson was a hell of a baseball player.
Yeah. The thing about Robinson was he was a better athlete in other sports.
Track and football. Yeah. Track and field and football. I mean, he could have been an Olympic athlete, but that's my take. And it's not as controversial.
Sure
but
it is.
From the point of view of Babe Ruth is not talked about in the same light if Josh Gibson is there, because those two are going home run for home run. And talk about an exciting time in baseball that's still talked about today is if you had Josh Gibson and Babe Ruth hitting at the same time against the same pitchers.
And odds are during that time, there's a very good likelihood they would have been on the Yankees together.
Maybe.
And
jeez.
Could you imagine that race? I mean, everybody remembers Mantle and Maris. By the way, Roger Maris doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. But he doesn't. He was a nice player that had a great year. I'm giving him the record. He still owns a single season record. But
not anymore.
Yes, he does.
No, he doesn't.
He does too.
Even in your imagination that the steroid era doesn't count, what's his name just beat it last year.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Sorry. My bad.
Aaron Judge.
Aaron Judge beat it.
62.
Okay. So good for him. But back during when he and Mantle, God, how quickly they forget the baseball season is why we don't talk about baseball a lot on this show, because people don't watch.
It's lost its luster.
So anyways, getting back to that, to finish it off, the race with Ruth and Gibson would have been an iconic all-time race. I would have loved to have seen it. Would have raised them both to higher levels.
Yeah.
I do think Gibson probably would have had the record. Ted Williams would have had the record.
It wasn't for World War II. Yeah.
And the Korean War. Don't forget,
that's right. He went to both.
He was in 2 wars. He easily would have beat 714.
Yeah.
Aaron probably still would be the record holder because I think he would have played long enough to get the record.
Right.
But
Josh Gibson, I don't think gets to much more than 714 because, again, there was imagine Josh Gibson played against a lot of really good talent in the Negro Leagues. Babe Ruth played against a lot of really good talent in Major League Baseball. And if you combine those leagues back in the day when you should have, you've now added a lot better talent with better pitchers. And I don't know if any of them if either Josh Gibson or Babe Ruth get to 714 with the talent that would have been added to Major League Baseball at that time.
There were less teams. The 4th and 5th starters would have been every good as some teams' 1st and 2nd starters. It would have been fun to find out. But
it would have been. That's my controversial take. I have another one that I thought about because I actually fell into a wormhole again. Big surprise that I got sidetracked and went down a squirrel moment. He's looking at a squirrel. I don't have it on the screen right now, so nobody knows what you're looking at. But the whole painted picture of Ty Cobb, of him being this huge racist human being and this bum alcoholic, and that he sharpened his spikes.
Ty Cobb didn't
exist.
Ty Cobb was a victim of the worst kind of yellow journalism that happened after he died.
Well, and he's famous for saying, and this is why he was allowed to be painted that way, because he never defended himself. He says, I'm not here to talk about the good things I've done. I'm proud of them, and they're going to stand for what they are. Did you realize this? So in 1907, he was hurting for money. So at the end of 1907, he started investing in real estate. So he bought all this real estate in a predominantly black area, rebuilt it with really nice houses, sold them for cheap because he wanted to keep it a black neighborhood, named it Booker T. Washington Heights, and just built new homes for all these families, bought their property, and then sold it back to them for almost the same exact cost, just to help people out. He was, if there was ever somebody who was handicapped or a kid, no matter what color they were, he always brought them up front so they could see better.
Now, Ty Cobb is also the guy that went into the stands to fight with people. He was not perfect by any means. He was a hard...
Dude had a temper. Dude didn't grow up very well, but this is also a guy who tells stories about how he called him Uncle Ezra, I think it was, in this story. And this was on Bleacher Report, the stories I'm getting from. Read the article. But taught him how to swim. He hung with black kids all the time. He had a hunting cabin that he bought where he had a black family living there to watch the property, and went up hunting with the guy all the time.
Yeah. Ty Cobb, this view that he was the reason that major leagues weren't integrated is the biggest crock.
Well, and that he was a horrible guy. There's another story where he was out waiting for a kid. He didn't have kids of his own, but he always looked after his friends' kids, and they were coming out of a movie, and he was there like a father figure waiting for him to pick him up. They get in the car, and he hears a guy asking for directions to a veterans hospital. He finds out the guy was a World War I vet. Said, "Hey, I'll give you a ride." Gives him a ride to the hospital and hands him $20, which in today's money is like $200
or more,
just so he had some money to take care of himself. I mean, this guy was a really, really good guy. He had a temper. He was a huge competitor.
He was a man of his time.
But man, the fact that Ty Cobb was painted as this terrible human being.
You want to watch a bad movie?
The Cobb?
Go watch the Tommy Lee Jones movie.
Yeah,
That's
Cobb.
awful.
Well, it's based off the book that
Right.
started all this
Which,
nonsense.
as I said, was yellow journalism. This journalist we had an axe to grind with Ty Cobb.
Right.
Because Cobb wouldn't talk about his past or anything else. He just...
that my actions stand on their own. I'm proud of them. I'm not here to brag about what I've done.
He's a man of the greatest generation. He was actually before the greatest generation, but same type of time where I don't talk about the past. I'm not talking about myself. He didn't self-promote.
No, he started an education foundation for kids that went to anybody that needed.
Almost.
He also went down to Texas when they were talking about integrating baseball in the Texas League, and went out and gave a giant speech in support of the integration of baseball. I just don't. I'm hoping the stories are starting to change about Ty Cobb, which is good. But they need to make another Ty Cobb movie where they show him for the man that he really was. Because this is also a man during World War II and even before that went up to Judge Landis and said, "Why are you not integrating baseball? We have black players out here ready to play, and you're playing guys with one arm."
Right.
That's not an exaggeration, by the way.
Don't forget, they call him a midget at the time, the little person.
Right.
You're making a carnival out of this when we have
real players.
Right.
We have real players. And by the way, you can look this up. There was a man during World War II when they were hurting for players that had one arm that they had playing in the outfield.
Made a movie about him.
What?
I think it's a Mickey Stratton story.
What are we doing here? Those are my two big controversial takes that I thought about, where it's like both of those things, history's different if those stories are made to what they're supposed to be.
But you know what?
And the Jeter one is perfect.
And I do agree with everything you said about back during that time, but you can't change. You can't take today's morality and today's.
That's not morality.
It is, though. You can't put today's, what we consider as outrageous today, and apply it to people who lived in the past. You just can't do it.
You can't. All my take is that if Josh Gibson was playing in Major League Baseball, Babe Ruth is not on the pedestal he's on today.
May or may not have been, but
no way.
Look, I agree with you. I wish they all could have played. I wish Cool Papa Bell, Buck O'Neil, Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson, on and on and on, all could have been in the major leagues in the 20s and 30s. It would have made baseball so much better, but they weren't. Can't change the past. No. Honor them. Make sure all the Negro League players get into the Hall of Fame that deserve it.
Right.
And move on, because unfortunately, the sad thing about the Negro League is they didn't keep the records the way MLB did. Right. So we don't know how many exactly a Josh Gibson hit. But they did play in the major league parks. They were every bit as good as the white players.
I have another one.
Okay.
Speaking of baseball, and then we're going to move on to other topics, but this is an important one.
Stay with us, folks. We love baseball.
They started including the Negro League records.
Oh, don't start. If you're going to bring up Henry Aaron, because Henry Aaron should have had his first 2 years in the Negro Leagues, including
He
his
played 1 year
home
in the
run count.
Negro Leagues. He played 1 year.
But that 1 year makes him the all-time homer. Don't get me started
He had
on
45 home runs for the Indianapolis Clowns. Major League Baseball included the Negro League stats.
Arbitrarily,
Hold on.
the line
Hold on.
just so
Hold on.
Aaron's records couldn't be included, so the cheater could still be the number one guy.
Hank Aaron
You're winding
played
me
for
up.
the Indianapolis Clowns. He had about 45 home runs for the Indianapolis Clowns that year. They included all the Negro League stats up to, what was it, like 51?
Something like the year after Aaron.
It was like
joined.
2 years before Aaron went to the Negro
Okay,
Leagues.
2 years, whatever.
So if you include his year with the Clowns, he's still the home run king.
He is, because he would have been at about 795.
I want to talk about controversy in sports.
Well, again, look no farther than the clown. Aaron played for the Indianapolis Clowns, and we now have a clown in the commissioner's office.
That we do. That we do. Hey, let us know your controversial takes, because we hit baseball, but there's a lot of them when it comes to football, when it comes to hockey, when it comes to soccer, and we would love to hear what your controversial takes are, and we'll talk about them on the next show. But leave that in the comment section below, and while you're down there, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get to enjoy making him mad as much as I do.
You wound me up. I hadn't thought about that one because I tried to bury it, and you son of a bitch, you bring it up.
You're welcome. Moving on. So here's another. This is a not so controversial take, but it fits into this. It's a new segment, but it transitions well. Reggie Bush was just elected to the College Football Hall of Fame.
Yes, he should be.
Which he should. In my opinion, the best college football player to ever play in the game. Hands down.
Okay.
Give him back his Heisman Trophy.
Oh, it's long past time. It's long past time. If you're going to let kids get paid at this point,
give him back his Heisman
give
Trophy.
him his Heisman Trophy. It's just, it's ridiculous that he's not.
What are we doing? He asked for it back. People forget he gave it back. He's like, I don't want this to be a huge issue. I don't want this to be a black spot on USC. I'm just going to give it back.
So
he gave it back.
We got a guy who does a classy thing, and yet those same morons that are at the Heisman committee give the Heisman to somebody who puts F Utah on his fingernails when there was 2 or 3 other guys that could have easily gotten the award.
Yeah, I mean, this was probably the most talented Heisman class we've seen in a while this year. You definitely didn't have to give it to Caleb Williams, nor should you have, because if you're going to act like a child don't win grown-up awards.
A chump.
Like, that's just how it goes. But Reggie Bush, and that's why Reggie Bush got busted for this to begin with, is because he is such a class act.
Yeah.
He didn't hide anything. They asked him about it. He was honest about it. Reggie Bush is one of the biggest class acts we've ever seen in sports, and he's punished for it. And now he's elected in the College Football Hall of Fame, which, again, should have happened a long time ago. It should have happened the second he entered the NFL. Now give him his Heisman back, because that shouldn't be a vacated year. Reggie Bush earned that Heisman Trophy on the field, not only with his play, but with his attitude. And him getting a nice car isn't going to make a difference. By the way, half that USC team was also paid, but you don't hear about that.
No, because Reggie Bush stood up and took one for the entire team, literally in that case.
He didn't vacate any wins. He didn't vacate any national championships. Give him his Heisman Trophy back. He's earned it, and he did nothing wrong.
Not today. I mean, this is one time where, even though I said
you're a hypocrite.
Don't judge players.
You're a hypocrite. I understand.
In this case, it's close enough where if you're going, Reggie Bush is the reason NIL came about.
Correct.
Because everybody looked at that
Reggie
situation.
Bush, and you could say Johnny Manziel was a big part for it too.
You could. I mean, those guys of that era and the ones that were getting it under the table. I'll go back to what I said before. You should not give incoming freshmen any kind of NIL deal. Let it start in year 2. And we've talked about this. The college athletic department should have an NIL department. I don't want agents being any part of this. If an agent's involved, a kid should still be kicked out and they should be penalized. because I don't want agents in there. I don't want the pick whoever, not Scott Burrows in mainly baseball, but that kind of an agent involved in college football. Just don't.
It's fair. That's fair. Speaking of agents, it's time to move on to the NFL because a lot happened. We're sticking with the controversial topics today in a lot of ways.
Oh,
because Joe Mixon did touchdown celebration making fun of the coin flip.
He should have made it. Is it making fun or pointing out the fact that the NFL is blatantly using this as a way to get the NFC and the AFC championship games to be forevermore on neutral sites instead of the home field?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part of it. But here's the deal, though. If you didn't want it to come down to a coin flip, then you should have finished the game.
I got two examples for you. I would like you to tell me if you know these two dates. August 12th, 1978, and October 24th, 1971.
I mean, you already told me these a while ago.
Yeah, but play along with me.
I'll let you go.
August 12th, 1978, Darryl Stingley gets hit by Jack Tatum, is paralyzed for the rest of his life.
Yeah, minute left in the game.
No, the next one is a minute left in the game.
Okay.
Chuck Hughes, playing for the Lions of the Bears, it was that game, is actually killed on the field with a hit.
Yeah.
Drops dead. Heart attack.
Jesus.
Drops dead. Heart attack. They finished the game.
They finished.
With a minute left in that game. And then with Stingley's case, it was like any other injury, sure, but he was paralyzed. The team saw he was paralyzed.
Right.
Carried off the field. They finished the game. Speaking of men being men, and this may hack a lot of people off, there was no reason the Buffalo-Cincinnati game couldn't have been finished.
I have a different take. I have a different take than that. They left it up to the players, which is great. The players said we can't finish the game. That's a hard thing to see, right? So I understand in that moment not wanting to play the game. You and I in that moment were saying, well, you have to cancel the game now, because at that point you took the players off the field. It was too late. You let it sink in too much. You had to cancel the game.
Correct.
My take is that if you as players are going to decide not to finish the game, which is a fine call, it messed you up that much, whatever. You don't now get to complain about a coin flip deciding things. You don't get to sit here and all of a sudden complain about not getting home field advantage. The records need to stand as they are. This whole coin flip thing, this whole neutral site thing is bullshit.
Penalizing Kansas City and Kansas City
didn't do anything.
They had nothing involved.
Kansas City won their games. They played their games. They won their games. You negated this game again. Fine. But everything stands as is then. You decided not to finish the game. You now don't get to bitch and moan that you don't get fair treatment. That is fair treatment. The NFL let you not play that game.
Life's not fair.
They listened to you and said, this is hard. We understand where you're coming from. You don't have to finish this game if you don't want to. You don't then get to say, well, I'm going to want everything I had if we would have finished the game. And what if we won that game? We own the tiebreaker. We should have a chance at the first seed. Too bad. You decided not to play the game.
Can't have your cake and eat it too. And by the way, before I get the Skip Bayless treatment, what happened to Damar Hamlin was horrific. I am so glad he's out of the hospital as of today.
Yeah, he was discharged.
He's fine.
We even donated to his charity.
Yes.
I mean, we are a huge supporter of Hamlin, and I'm glad he's okay.
It was something horrific to see. I get it.
That's what I'm saying. I understand.
Made the decision.
I understand not playing that game. It was a horrible situation, but you don't get special treatment now that you made that choice.
They could have easily said, no, we're going to win this game for Hamlin.
They could have.
Finished it.
They could have. But they left it up to the players. The players said they weren't going to take the field. The records stand as they are.
Yes.
Period.
They played one less game than Kansas City.
Correct. Kansas City now gets the 1 seed by default. Buffalo gets the 2 seed. Cincinnati gets the 3 seed. You decided not to finish that game. Cincinnati could have thrown a fit and said, no, we're finishing this game. You have to forfeit. And then all of a sudden, Buffalo has to forfeit that game. That wasn't the decision that was made, which also, by the way, would have been a fair decision. No, they decided to vacate the game. Now you don't get to complain that the NFL is doing a coin flip to decide things and that you don't get the first seed and home field advantage because you didn't get to finish the game. No, you decided not to play.
This is one of those times where I've got friends of mine who said, well, you're just one of those hard-ass boomers, blah, blah, blah. Back, rub a little dirt on it and you'll be fine. No, I'm not saying that at all. What happened to Hamlin, kid almost died on the field.
Terrifying.
It was terrifying. But was it more terrifying than what happened to Chuck Hughes back in 1971?
Right. If you were really a boomer, you'd be blaming it on a COVID shot.
Did you hear about the kid at the Air Force Academy?
I was making a joke.
No.
I was making a joke. I don't want to get into it. It was a joke. I want to move on.
No. I know you want, but take a step back. Speaking of people blaming the COVID vaccine, and I'm not doing that at all, but an offensive lineman, 21 years old from the Air Force Academy, was walking to class and dropped dead of a heart attack.
Wow.
It wasn't on the field or anything, but it's just like, that's got to be investigated. Find out, did this kid have a heart condition you didn't know about? I mean, the Air Force Academy is a pretty tough place to get into.
It is.
But it's just, I don't like the automatic running and crying. No, it's all because of COVID. We don't know what the hell caused it. I'm not saying that's what caused it at all, but
I was making a joke. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I want to find out what happened to Hamlin.
I wasn't apologizing to you. I was apologizing to the audience.
I know. For me, yeah. I want to know what caused Hamlin.
Well, more research should be done. I was making a joke because I saw that all over social media.
Oh, it's been there everywhere.
But I do have to say, though, and I'm not being a hard ass either. I get not playing the game, but I hate this identity. And as a parent, especially, I hate this concept of, well, you get to have your cake and eat it too. Like, number one, by the way, that's a dumb saying, because if you were to get a cake, why wouldn't you eat it? Like, that's kind of dumb. I don't know where that saying came from.
It has something to do with Maria. Well, Maria said let
them eat cake.
I don't know what the etymology of
which she never said, by the way. That was just amazing propaganda by the rebels. Squirrel. I'm sorry. Squirrel. I got it.
Okay, keep going.
But what I do have to say is that I have no issues with you making the decision not to play, but you don't. The NFL coddling this and saying, well, we're going to play on a neutral site now. That's not fair to Kansas City. You want to talk about not being fair? That's not fair to Kansas City, and it's not fair to entire fan base. And by the way, what are you going to do to make up for it for the season tickets that Kansas City could have sold? What are you going to do, by the way, if Kansas City gets beat and all of a sudden Buffalo has a home game? Does Buffalo now get a home game?
Probably.
So the only team we're screwing over here is the Kansas City Chiefs.
And by the way,
they never said that. They're just assuming Kansas City and Buffalo are going to be in this game.
But now Kansas City fans have to pay for travel to go wherever. I'm assuming it's going to be at Dallas.
Correct. And you're taking away a home field advantage that shouldn't be taken away. It's not Kansas City's fault somebody got hurt, and it's not Kansas City's fault the players decided not to play the game. Everybody made a stink saying this should be the players' decision, and the NFL agreed. They allowed the players to make the call. No fines, no punishment, no anything. They said, we're going to negate the game. You don't now get to say, well, it's not fair that we didn't get to finish that game.
I'm not laughing at you. You just sounded so much like the ESPN coach from Arizona State.
Herm Edwards. You've got to play the game. Yes. Well, and again, this isn't saying that they should have played the game. It's saying you chose not to. And I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. There are consequences to any action in this world. No matter how much humans think that shouldn't be the case, there are consequences to actions in this world. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. We've known that since Newton. You have consequences to your choices.
Oh, Newton. Short Circuit. Great movie.
It is a great movie. I haven't seen that movie in a long time.
Great movie.
It is a great movie.
Every time I hear Newton, I think.
Found out Meg Ryan was pregnant because he was in the... different movie. What am I thinking of?
I don't know, but Ali Sheedy was in Short Circuit, not Meg
Martin
Ryan.
Short, Dennis Quaid, Meg Ryan.
Inner Space.
Thank you. I got those messed up.
We're going to move on, though.
We're going to move on.
Because I want to talk about NFL coaches.
All right. I could go on about this for hours, so it's probably a good time to move on.
I think so, too. Green Bay Packer fans reside in this house.
Yes.
Green
I
Bay
think our
Packer
fans are well
owners.
aware.
They reside in this house.
Yes.
There's only one person. If Green Bay, which is similar to, in my mind, the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay needs to,
except Green Bay wins.
let me make my point.
All right.
Green Bay doesn't need.
Green Bay is more like Ohio State because they win. Green Bay is more like Ohio State because they get to the finals and then choke.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Matt LeFleur needs to be fired.
Matt LeFleur needs to be fired. So does
care.
Brian Gutekunst.
I don't care about the 13-3 records. He got there fine. They had talent, but when the game was on the line, when you really had to make a tough call,
He choked.
he folded. He folded like a cheap suit.
Choked.
It had it right in front of him, and he choked.
The cool runnings.
It's a cool running.
You were there, and you choked.
Matt LeFleur is like a manager in business who tries to be everybody's friend and can't make the hard call. He was in his post-game or the Monday end-of-season press conference and announcing that he wasn't going to fire Joe Barry.
He should have been fired on the spot for that.
He should have been. Joe Barry, the guy who played zone until he was called out by his own player.
Right. Played man for one game. Where they won 41-6.
They shut them down and go into the biggest game of the year, the one they have to win to get into the playoffs. So it really was a playoff game. And he goes back to his zone. And in the press conference before the game, he goes, well, I listened to what they have to say, but in the end, it's my decision. Well, your decision cost the Packers the game.
Right.
And Matt LeFleur, if you don't have the balls to go ahead and fire him for that, then I'm sorry, it's your turn to walk out the door, and let's go and get a coach who can come in and take over the organization and stand up and be a man and go, look, this is my team. I make the decisions, and he never does that.
This coach in that big game was caught asking somebody if they should punt in a situation.
It's his
on live
game.
television. You think we should punt? Asking that question to somebody, who knows?
That's a fireable offense. And you know the difference? Everybody talks about he comes from the Shanahan tree. You know the difference between McVay and Kyle Shanahan and Matt LeFleur?
All different names.
Yeah, Matt LeFleur is everybody's buddy and can't win the big games.
Correct.
McVay and Shanahan have balls of steels, make the calls that have to make call, and win the game when it's on the line.
Correct.
It's time for him to go. And then Rodgers, if he comes back or not, I don't care at that point.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time. I would love to see Rodgers come back and run one. We need a different coach in that situation, a different general manager. But talk about a player getting treated, again, a Packer fan through and through, but talk about a player getting treated unfairly by an organization. Aaron Rodgers got nothing for support this year.
No, God,
he was back-to-back MVP. The only reason they won 13 games the last 2 years was because of Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers can come up.
People saying, "Oh, he can change the play." He has no choice when your coach doesn't know how to read a defense. Like, let's be honest here.
You gave him
Matt
no
LeFleur
wide
has
receivers.
never changed. He has a game plan for the first quarter and then doesn't adapt for the rest of the game. He's a bad coach. He's just a bad coach.
13-3 seasons. How many times did they have the lead in the first half and then go and coast the second half and barely hang on to win?
Right.
Several times.
Go,
and this is where Green Bay needs to go and make a statement. Don't give me that it's little Green Bay. They have more money than anybody else. Go and make the offer to a Sean Payton or a McVay if he's not going back to LA. Go and make the tough call and bring him in and fire Goody. If you can get a Sean Payton, you fire Goody, you fire LeFleur, and say, here you go.
Do the same thing with Sean McVay. Say, here, run our team.
I don't know. I'm still against having a coach being coach and general manager, with the exception of somebody like a Sean Payton, who's proven he can do both.
He wasn't the GM in New Orleans.
No, but he was intimately involved in the decisions. I think he could, like Holmgren learned how to. I think he can come in and do it as well.
Rodgers is like any other player where you want direction from your leaders, right? You want somebody that's confident and that knows. Now, people with Rodgers' personality, if you don't have that, he's going to step up and step all over you. It's up to you as a head coach to bring that in and say, you're the best player in the world.
We're still doing it my way.
Still doing it my way.
And
let's be honest, Rodgers did it.
Yes.
his way. And we lost a lot of important games doing it Matt LaFleur's way.
And I'm not saying that Favre at times, there were situations where he made bad throws in that game against the Lions. But you know what? I still am not going to put it on there. I think he can rise to the occasion. Or if they're going to separate, but do not separate until you make a coaching change.
Correct.
And give the team over to somebody who can really make the.
Well, you hear people saying all the time, well, if Rodgers is going to leave, let's see what Matt LaFleur can really do now that he has Jordan Love. We just saw it this year. Why do we want to see that again?
We are not going back to the glory days. We're going to the gory days of Lindy and Fonnie, where you get to that 8-8, maybe get into the playoffs, maybe not, but you're not going to make a mark.
You get a different coach because Jordan Love is the next Hall of Fame quarterback for the Green Bay Packers.
Oh my God!
And you get a coach that's ready to coach that type of talent.
I want a coach that can make a tough call, and if that means you're trading Jordan Love because he doesn't have it, then you make the trade. If you can get 4 first round
picks, why would you trade two Hall of Fame quarterbacks in one shot?
I wouldn't. Love's not. If you can get 4 first-round picks from San Francisco, maybe that trade should have been made.
Yeah, it should have been made a while ago. Listen, I want to see Rodgers go and win somewhere. I really do. He's earned that right. Let him go to a built team like a Vegas or a Jets or someplace like that, like Tom Brady did.
Adams didn't have to leave. If they would have signed him the summer before the Rodgers fiasco,
right? He left because he was pissed about that.
As well, he should be.
He made a mistake clearly because David Carr's terrible. But talk about the other coaches. So we've talked about coaches that should be fired. Lovie Smith is the most unfairly treated coach to ever coach a game. Good for him for going out and winning and saying, you know what, you're going to fire me. I'm going to cost you the first overall pick, and we're going to win.
I'm glad he did.
I am too.
Because what happened to him in Tampa, what happened to him at University of Illinois was just
Texans.
Wrong. And now
the only time where he was fairly fired from a situation was with the Bears, and that's just because he had been there a while, and it had run its course. They were ready to rebuild. They were moving on. It makes perfect sense. The same thing happened with Mike McCarthy.
At the same time, I think Lovie Smith, considering what the Bears have been through, and now they're going to draft another quarterback in the first round, apparently.
They better not.
Get ready, wait for it. Lovie Smith could have taken them through a rebuild. He is a very, very good coach.
And he has a hell of a beard.
Great beard.
Unbelievable beard. Dude, bring Lovie to Green Bay. I'm all for it. Talk about a man that understands the history. One of my favorite things he ever said was, we're going to beat the Green Bay Packers. Like, that was awesome.
He gets it. He's got a brilliant football mind, and he's a very intelligent guy.
Yeah.
Outside of that,
it was like Jim Tressel going into Ohio State and saying how many games they had till they played Michigan next. I mean, it's just it's a brilliant move by a coach. I'd love to have Lovie in Green Bay. He'd be a great coach there. But man, to get fired after one season when you know you're going to suck. Yeah. Like the Texans went into that season knowing we're going to be a bad team and then we're going to start to rebuild. And you to be fired after one season that team played for him, they were terrible, but they played for Lovie Smith.
That was a lack of talent. This wasn't a Ray Rhodes situation in Green Bay where it was just.
Ray Rhodes was never given a chance.
There were other issues with
He and Favre didn't get along. That was the issue with Ray Rhodes.
There were still other issues.
There were.
But Lovie Smith, I'm sorry for what happened. It shouldn't have happened. You're a class act, and winning that last game, kudos to you, man.
I remember watching. I loved the Packers-Bears rivalry when Lovie Smith was there. It was fun. You didn't know if you were going to win every game, but you knew you were going to have a competition with two coaches that understood what was at stake in that rivalry. And he had his team ready to play. And for him to get fired after one season, and the way he got fired in Tampa for no reason, and the way he got fired in Illinois after, 2 seasons?
Something like that. It wasn't not long enough to get his own players in there.
No, not at all. It doesn't make sense to me. I hope Lovie gets another job. Like I said, replace Matt LaFleur with Lovie Smith. I'd love to see him in Green Bay. That guy's too good of a coach for the way he's been treated throughout his career. And
speaking of dumb hires, watch the Packers bring back Nathaniel Hackett.
Matt LaFleur already said he's going to do that. He already said it. He was asked directly about it and was like, I've definitely thought about it.
You're kidding.
Nathaniel Hack's going to be offensive coordinator for Green Bay Packers next year. That's going to happen.
Another reason he should be fired.
I agree. Sean
mean,
McVay is questioning if this is going to be his last year as well, which is interesting. I mean, honestly,
there's a young guy, though.
He's a very young guy.
If he goes and works for ESPN or Fox or wherever for a couple of years.
Well, he can already write his own checkbook. I mean,
exactly.
Or write his own check, but from somebody else's checkbook. I'm just going to stop. Listen, I may be digging, but I'm just going to keep digging. Eventually, I'll get to China. I'll find my way out.
Wow. Okay.
Sean McVay, though, I don't think he wants to go through a rebuild. I think that's a big thing. I think he came back because he thought he had one more shot at a Super Bowl, especially with Matthew Stafford being there, because he really brought back a lot of the same team. And as soon as Stafford went down, again, proof why Stafford is such a great quarterback, because as soon as he goes down, that team was never the same. And what he was able to do with Baker Mayfield the last couple of games, the last game was bad, but he made Baker Mayfield look like a number one overall pick again.
He did. He's a great coach. And I would love to see him in Green Bay. I'd love to see Peyton in Green Bay, as I said. But there's still going to be more coaches that are going to be fired. There's a question whether McCarthy in Dallas is going to be fired if they don't win the first playoff game.
Yeah, I mean, I think I always want to say Jimmy Johnson. No. Jerry Jones is itching to let go of Mike McCarthy, especially if he thinks he can get Sean Payton.
I don't think Payton takes the job because Jerry Jones wants to have control and
Correct.
be able to
I wouldn't
be that
if
guy.
I was him.
No.
Jim Harbaugh is having conversations with the Broncos right now. Now, he said he was staying in Michigan, and I think he will. But he's talking to the Broncos, and let me tell you, the Waltons got some deep pockets. Those pockets are as deep as the ocean, and if they're going to offer him as much money as they're able to offer him, it's going to be hard for him to stay at Michigan.
It will. I don't know if that's a good fit for him. I know he thinks Carolina might be a good fit for him.
Carolina's in there as well. I don't understand what the obsession with Carolina is. You don't really have much there. You got rid of McCaffrey. Now you have draft picks coming back on those.
True.
But you don't have a quarterback there.
No, you don't.
Sam Darnold's not the answer.
No.
Baker definitely wasn't. PJ Walker was a fun player to watch in the USFL, but there's a reason he was in the USFL, and he proved that. I mean, obviously he has the talent to be in the NFL. He'll be a backup for the rest of his career, but he's not a starting quarterback in this league.
But in that division, it'd be the easiest for Harbaugh to get him up there and be challenging.
Well, yeah, because you have Tampa Bay, who's on a downward slide and is going to continue. You have Atlanta, who
is treading water.
Should be better than they are. I mean, talk about a perennial 8-8 team. Who else is in that division?
New Orleans.
New Orleans, thank you. New Orleans, again, a perennial 8-8 team. And that's what the division is filled with. But there's a lot to build when it comes to Carolina. Like, you don't really have a lot of legs to stand on there. There's not something where you can go there. Like when Tom Brady decided to go to Tampa, well, you had a ready-built team that just needed a quarterback.
Right. And I think that's what he thinks. I think Vegas is another I think that's why Brady wants to go to Vegas. They're a quarterback away.
Yeah. They can't. I think Josh McDaniels would have been fired after year one, but the Raiders can't afford to fire Josh McDaniels. They're still paying off Gruden on top of McDaniels' contract.
Correct.
Like you don't have a choice. You have to ride with him for a few years.
I agree. It's going to be fun to watch the carousel continue. I just hope the Packers make the tough choice and move on from Matt LeFleur.
You need to move on from Gutekunst. You need to move on from Matt LeFleur. But you let us know what you think in the comments below. And while you're down there, don't forget to do this right here, which is like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get to enjoy this show as much as we enjoy making it. It is time for the scariest moment of the show. It is time for your last word.
So this is going to be hopefully an uplifting last word. We're coming into the spring of the year. We've gotten through the holidays.
Yes.
Our veterans and our first responders are, in some cases, still living with PTSD, and they're still living with the wounds that they got defending our freedoms. So if you haven't donated to someplace like Tunnels to Tower or Wounded Warrior, please do so. Those are great organizations. Tunnels to Tower just built a huge housing complex in Tampa for Gold Star families. Because it's not just the warriors that get hurt, it's the families that have to suffer if they're not there anymore to help pay the bills. So That's my last word today. Nothing controversial. Go ahead and make the contributions. And I'll include St. Jude's in that for other reasons. St. Jude is a great hospital. Everything you donate goes right to the kids who need it who are fighting cancer in Memphis and all over the country. They don't charge for anything. They cover all the bills. It's a great organization and one I've donated to for many, many years.
You and me both. I like that last word. Even though gas prices are up, he didn't make a peep. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We always love having you here. This has been Sports Talk with Dad.
Bye, everybody.